Welcome to Introspection with Jeff. This is a very special video. I planned another video which I may film later tonight, although right now it's 8:11 p.m. I may do it tomorrow, but I felt a sense of urgency for certain reasons. I got a message, a text message today. It was very reassuring from somebody, but I felt a sense of urgency and I wanted to get it out. I hope that the rest of you can find something in this video that appeals to you and evokes, inspires you to think and so forth. But I wanted to get to very profound things. I wanted to explain my conception of the universe and of divinity, my perception of divinity. That at some point there's a singularity, and that, for example, in dreams, we dream, and our imagination takes our actual thoughts and creates avatars for them in the dream. Those avatars aren't the actual thoughts; those embody the thoughts; those represent the thoughts, and I believe that at some level there's a singularity, and that we're existing, we're roaming around our environment, and that there are events and other things perhaps which are like thoughts, akin to thoughts and dreams, in that they on some core level that we're not aware of, they are the true form, and that is why I appreciated it, and I understand Plato's concept of focus of those core elements, even music, movies, are avatars. The events in movies are driven by themes, and the themes, in some sense, are more important than what the events are in the movie. In the 5 books of Moses, which I will explain in a moment, the middle book, Leviticus, doesn't have any reference, as I understand it, to, actually I think it does. It mentions commandments in terms of 7 days and 8 days, but in terms of the event itself, it depicts Moses at the top of Mount Sinai, or Mount Sinai, interacting with Yud-He Vav-He, and it seems timeless. It seems like at the very center, these books surround this very center core. And I believe at some level that there is this center core, and that we're typically aware of just the periphery in our lives. Now, I want to get this out. I want to elaborate on this further and explain it further. As I mentioned before, there's a Jew a very scholarly Jew, who's found these Jews typically call he has some art, and he also has a 200 work in the book, and now of course it has a conclusion. It has all 120 pages. The blueprint. This is the blueprint of the five books of Moses, the Pentateuch. You may not recognize it because people are typically reading it in linear form. There are 2 aspects. There's the linear form, which is the exoteric, and the pattern form, which is the esoteric. Of course, the exoteric. This may be what was meant by Moses writing 2 copies of the tablets, and the myth that the 10 Commandments could be seen on either side of the tablets, and also when he breaks the tablets, they break into fragments. You can either see the fragments and lose sight of the whole picture, the whole model, as usually is done with linear reading. You read sentences and verses and you don't see the whole picture. It's proper context. I want to give that proper context quickly. Imagine a cross like this. You have Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. And going this way, you have Genesis, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy. This describes the Exodus out of Egypt. This Genesis describes the part before that, the covenants being given in the patriarchs. Now, each of these books can further be expanded, and it is given in rows and columns. He describes this as weaving and warping. There are warp threads that go across, there are columns, and weave threads or weft threads that go up and down. The weave threads are typically run linearly, and the warp threads interrupt and warp the weave threads. The way he found this model, this pattern, and repeating the text, it tends to repeat, systematically repeat like a broken record over and over and over. I'll skip that for right now. Just understand that this is a matter of units, 5 levels deep. What I'm talking about now is the level that's furthest out, the most widespread perspective. It's a cross. The 3 books going this way all have a pattern in that each of the books has its unattached unit. Here being in the on the left hand side, there within Genesis, you have the first creation story, which would be chapter 1, and that's only involving Elohim. This story, the middle creation story, has Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohim as a deity name, and here is the flood myth. Then you have an unattached unit separating this column from this matrix of columns and rows. That's the Tower of Babel story, and it involves Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh coming down, and they were all, the civilization was all of one language. He comes down, he descends, and splits up their one language into many languages so as to confound them so that they can't go up to the tower and see the deity and see the heavens. The Garden of Eden story is the only story which depicts the entity as with both names as one singular entity, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohim. Outside of that, this top creation story is only using Elohim. This bottom story involves both Elohim and Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. This is the flood story. Now we have this A column, we have the unattached unit of the Tower of Babel story, and then moving further over, we have 4 columns, 3 rows. We have another column over here. This is the Joseph story. This Joseph story and the 3 creation myths linked together. They both deal with the kingdom, or kingdoms. This being a divine kingdom, this being an earthly kingdom. Then the matrix of 3 rows and I believe 4 columns is like this. Elohim is the only active, is the name of the deity. When the deity is active, in the top row, Elohim is the only name that the deity goes by. In the bottom row, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is the only name used when the deity is an active participant. And the middle row has both names used. This is similarly presented in like a teaser moment in the chapter 1, the top unit here, the first creation story, which you have 2 columns of the creation. You have day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, and then you have a day 7. Day 1 involves, these all involve creation by means of dividing something new out of something. Day 1 involves dividing the light from the darkness, and day 2 involves dividing the upper waters from the lower waters. Day 3 involves dividing the waters out so that you can see the land. Day 4 parallels day 1. This column represents the entities that inhabit the entities created in this column. This column is phrased in the entities are phrased in singular form. In this column, they're phrased in plural form. Day 4 is the creation of the stars and the moon, the greater lights and the lesser lights, which dwell within the realm of light and darkness. The middle, day 3, in the middle, day 2 had the upper waters and the lower waters separating. Day 5 is the creation of the birds of the air, the creatures of the air, and the creatures of the sea. There's a parallel there. And then beneath that, day 6 involves the creation of vegetation, which inhabits the land, which was divided out and separated and become distinct in day 3. And then day 7 is the day of rest. Now, the 10 plagues are a reversal of this. They're presented in a different form. And pay attention to the positions of Moses' hand and Aaron's hand, the way it's described, so forth. As I understand it, the top, this is the 10 plagues are a grid of 3 columns, I believe, and 3 going across. That makes 9, and then a final plague, which would be the death of the firstborn. That's akin to the first Breshit, meaning in the beginning, in the creation, the 3 creation stories. The top line of 3, the top column of 3 represents mentions those 3 plagues brought about by Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh himself. The middle plague, the middle 3 plagues are brought about by Moses and Aaron, and the bottom, by Aaron, I believe, and the bottom column of 3 is, or bottom row of 3 is brought about by Moses, as I recall. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh deals with matters of the heart within someone, and bad intentions and ethics and the commandments, gives the commandments. Elohim, on the other hand, embodies more physical, tangible, mundane reality. It's related to physical existence and creation as a commandment. That's Elohim is the one that commands them to be fruitful and multiply. So you have Elohim involved in creation, the first 7 days of creation, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh involved in the 10 plagues of Egypt. Now, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh caused the 10 plagues to happen and kept hardening Pharaoh's heart so that, and it says this in the text, so that he can be able to display all 10 plagues. These 10 plagues are an illusion. They are in the same format as this important layout, this important blueprint found that makes up the 5 books of Moses. And Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh explains that he must harden Pharaoh's heart so that Pharaoh will not let them out too quickly, so that all 10 plagues must be displayed, and that the Israelites will understand and know all 10 plagues and catch the pattern and be able to pass it on to their children and know that Yud Hey Vav Hey, that this is Yud Hey Vav Hey. Now, in the Garden of Eden story is the only time in which, as I said before, Yud Hey Vav Hey and Elohim were a single entity. In the other places, you see Elohim at the top and you see Yud Hey Vav Hey at the top and Elohim below. Now that's Genesis book. Leviticus book is a grid or matrix of, well, actually two of them with the unattached unit in the middle. So over here in Genesis, you have the creation column and then the unattached, and then a grid of several columns. I should go back to Genesis and mention that those middle columns, before you get the final column of the Joseph story, is, if I have it in the right order, family and then covenant, or covenant then family, then covenant. And it jumps back and forth. The bottom layer involves the deaths. The top layer mentions the births, the generation of such and such, and this is the generation of so and so. So you have beginnings, like this is the generation of, and then this is the death of. And then in the middle column, the middle unit within this cross, or otherwise known as Ezekiel's wheel, that is mentioned in chapter 1 of Ezekiel, you have two matrices or two grids. I believe this one has three, they all have 3 rows. I believe this one has 3 rows as well. This one has 4 rows. 4 columns. One of the columns doesn't follow the triad, dyad. There's an intricate pattern which I don't understand quite enough myself to explain here. In terms, what I mean by dyad is that within that unit, if you go further within, the text is further split up into columns and rows. Now, there's one that doesn't follow that pattern, one column of units which do not follow that pattern, and that is the one that deals with mentioning the diseases as if, and this is what the author of the website suspects, it's as if that one that doesn't fit is not supposed to be there. It feels out of place, as if it should be excised from the encampment. Now, you have those two. They could also be interpreted as the two cherubim or cheruvim in Hebrew facing each other. The middle unit is the unattached unit. This is chapter 19 of Leviticus. It is the one that has Yud Hey Vav Hey giving a commandment and then saying I am Yud Hey Vav Hey, gives another commandment and then says I am Yud Hey Vav Hey. That's a distinct pattern, as if I am Yud Hey Vav Hey is in the direct center of the entire tapestry. So, whereas that is in the middle book, Leviticus, which sits in the middle of this cross. Over here on the other side, opposite from Genesis, is Deuteronomy. It is a simple grid of, I don't remember how many columns. I know it's still by 3 rows, and there's a final unit, at the unattached unit at the end. Now, there are a certain number of units here in Genesis and Exodus which add up together to form a say 40, I can't remember the exact number, 55, something like that. And then these two books also add up. Its units add up to form the same number that you get when you add Exodus and Genesis. That leaves Leviticus right in the middle. And then you have Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. These have all of its unattached units in the center, whereas Genesis has its unattached unit almost all the way to one side, aside from that creation column. Deuteronomy has it all the way on the other side, and Leviticus has the unattached unit right in the middle. it aligns with this column. Exodus is consists of a quadrant of basically a square of 4 internal units, and then below here 4 internal units and 4 internal units. There's one unattached unit in the middle between these two top larger, quads of 4 units, and then another unattached unit right in the middle between this quad of 4 units. And then in the middle, there's another unattached unit. So altogether, there are 3 unattached units right in the middle. In Leviticus, I've already described it. It's also in the middle. And then in Numbers, it shows what may be a depiction of the encampment. These units are 3 units, and then a corner unit here, corner unit here, corner unit here, and corner unit here. There's also an unattached unit right in the middle, and then there are 3 units between each of these corner units going along, so it makes a square. And that seems to depict what's described as the encampment in the book of, the 5 books of Moses. When they've escaped Egypt and they make their encampment. It says that the heads of, there are 4 heads of all 12 tribes. They would be the units here. And these corner units are the only units within the book of Numbers which give out commandments. The other units relate to the census or relate to a narrative of some kind. And the center unit deals with the Korach uprising and the discussion, the struggle about who should be in the center commanding the Israelites. Now the Exodus layout I may describe the Exodus out of Egypt. Not sure. Leviticus would be that ark. You have the 2 cherubim facing each other with the mercy seat in the middle where Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh dwells. And could also be 2 tablets. There are other ways it could be interpreted. So I'm wondering, those are the basics. At the outset, again, you have the cross, 1 level inward. Each book has its own pattern. 1 level within that. Grid pattern, each unit within that grid pattern itself can be enlarged, and it has a grid pattern of so many columns and so many rows. And at that point, now you're getting to a level where you're reading it verse by verse by verse. And remember, it's not a linear reading of the verses. The verse may go down and then go across and begin another column. And you can detect this by means of phraseology patterns and theme patterns. So I've been going about 25 minutes. I believe I've said quite a bit. I'd like to mention that some of the most profound friendships I've seen depicted in film and TV are Return of the Jedi, which was the first film I saw in the movie theater. It was Luke Skywalker confronting his father, and he never gave up faith that his father, Anakin, was still in Darth Vader somewhere, and in the end he wins out. And it was a very profound moment when Darth Vader asks him to peel off his mask. It's very mythological. It goes back to lots of other earlier traditions of myths. And another profound moment is when not profound moment, but profound friendship is between Kirk and Spock. In fact, there are two movies, Wrath of Khan and Search for Spock, where Spock dies at the end, and then in the Search for Spock at the end, he's rejuvenated, and I remember he walks through and sees his former crewmates, and then he sees Kirk, and he says, "Jim, your name is Jim," and Jim Kirk smiles, and I think, as I said earlier, I think life is like that at some deeper level. There's some sublime thing going on. There's some sublime connection that we have to each other and to our universe, and that's why the way the Force is depicted in Star Wars speaks to me and jives with how I understand it. I think some of Kabbalah jives with how I understand the universe. In the popular Kabbalah myth of creation is that you have the Ein Sof, which literally means there is without bound, or there is without limitation, and in order to create new, a being separate from itself, so that it may understand its own self, it contracted, so to speak. It hid itself from the out. It hid itself in some mystical way. It contracted to leave room for this new entity, the other, and then from there that split off into levels which become more physical. You may call them dimensions, which become more physical. They all exist. Our souls, each of our souls connect with and are part of the Ein Sof, but we don't necessarily recognize that connection. We're typically only aware of the physical reality, and that's part of the concealment. I believe I've said just about all I wanted to say for right now. I'm getting out of breath. I'd like to drink something and so forth. I got some green tea, so I hope this means something. I hope the person sees this. I hope the rest of you all, got a chance to see it and take a look at my other videos. I've expressed a lot about myself in my other videos, and I'm very glad about that. I'm getting all my thoughts out there, so that if I should go, I'm not planning to, but I mean, my essence, my embodiment, my personality, my memories may be recorded at least somewhere on YouTube for posterity. Thanks. And as somebody recommended today, I should mention too, if you like this, please like it and subscribe. I know I've heard that myself before, but please leave a comment. I enjoy getting feedback. Only 2 people have really left comments to my whole video channel. So I would really like and appreciate more feedback and more comments. Thanks.